Welcome back to the NFL Goal Line. We're having some technical issues as our segment is being presented in several parts. Obviously, the NFL Goal Line. Right now we're having technical issues with Spreaker.com. We hope to round out the remainder of the show on one segment, as right now, right off the top, we'll be taking a look at the top 5 teams in the NFL. And, Week 8 is in the books, and marking the halfway point of this season, we have seen some tremendous events here happen in the NFL, from rookie quarterbacks to free agent flops. We've seen a lot of big time things happen in the NFL, and out of the skirmish, we've seen the steady performance of a few teams that have really come out on top in the NFL. Here's my mid-season power rankings, starting out at number 5, and this is a big surprise to a lot of Atlanta fans, but I do not have the undefeated Falcons any higher than number 5 for this reason, and this reason alone. I am not the biggest fan of their defense. They are giving up 144 yards on the ground per game, along with a very inconsistent front seven that's showing signs of weakness against inferior teams such as the Raiders, and not many people mention the Carolina Panthers, a terrible football team, almost beating the Falcons in their house. I only have them at number 5. Number 4 on this countdown, I have the San Francisco 49ers at 5-2. They cracked the list at number 4, and this team obviously has the firepower to win a championship. They almost were there last year, but my concern is the inconsistency against dominant teams in the trenches. Now, Minnesota beat them with their own fronts, and also New York, the football giants, did the same thing. Alex Smith is also not an upper echelon quarterback. He will not be on that list until he proves otherwise. The Niners certainly getting pounded in their 2 losses. I won't put them any higher unless they change things on their interior fronts. Number 3 in the NFL, I have the first AFC team on this list, the New England Patriots at 5-3. We just talked about them earlier. The Patriots just seem to have that final dimension. This offense needs to win the Super Bowl. They finally have an elite, dynamic run and pass combination, and perhaps the most lethal offense I've seen since they, were playing in 2007. They ranked number 1 in the NFL. The defense is also creating plays, and this team that Bill Belichick has put together just seems to be ready for February after they finally have a dominant win. Sure, it's the St. Louis Rams, but the Pats are on their way to a big playoff run. Number 2 in the NFL, the Houston Texans, the final team I have in the AFC. This team is just flying under the radar, and I'm a big surprise for the fact that this team, perhaps the most dominant in the trenches, has really flown under the radar. They're the best 2 or 3 teams in the NFL, and Houston has really had the offensive line put together, to compete with anyone in the NFL. Outside of the Green Bay Packers, this team has been rolling on all cylinders, and their roster is filled with all-stars. Just ask J.J. Watt. With a weak division, this team is set for a first-round bye. It's just 2 wins Houston needs to get to the Super Bowl. As long as Schaub clicks, so will the wins. Now, before getting to the number 1 mid-season power ranking on this countdown, I also want to mention that the teams off the list include some very, very impressive teams. Baltimore Ravens off the list. Denver Broncos not making the countdown, and also no Green Bay. They're tremendous teams, but I just don't see them clicking in the playoffs. The number 1 team, drumroll please, in the NFL, the New York Giants. They're the defending world champs, 6-2 on the year. Obviously, they just beat a division foe. Not a lot of guys around America just know the impact of a big division win. It's always different when you play a guy that you've known for years upon years. This team has played very well against the Giants. I'm speaking of the Dallas Cowboys. They're the defending world champs and still the best team in football with a quarterback that wins. That's the key in the NFL. And obviously a defense that also takes the ball away, and an offense that, believe it or not, statistically is the best in the NFC. Better than the Packers, better than the Ravens. My concern is this defense that ranks dead last in yards against playoff teams, or winning teams, however. But, how many times have we criticized the Giants for that kind of a defensive ranking. Giants are number 1, rounding out the top 5. That includes the Falcons at number 5, San Fran Niners at 4, Patriots at 3, and the Houston Texans at 2. As I mentioned, no Denver, no Baltimore, and no Green Bay on the countdown. And Phil, what are your reactions on a top 5 list that does not include, may I also mention, the Denver Broncos, who are rolling as of late?
Overall, I'd agree with your list. I mean, I personally would put Atlanta a little bit higher just to show respect for the record that they do have. And, no, they haven't been blowing teams out of the water. But, I feel they're battle-tested. I feel they know how to win the close game. The Giants, you look at 6-2 when you say, yeah, okay, maybe they are the best. They are the defending Super Bowl champions. I'll put them at number 2 just because they let Dallas get back in the game. If Des Bryant puts any sort of effort, they get upset by the Cowboys, and then you start wondering, is this team soft? Do they not know how to grind it out at the end? With 2 taps of a toe, this whole situation is different. And I'm still not taking away from the Giants. A win is a win, but you got to look at it, from the whole perspective. They jumped on them early, and a lot of those points came off of Tony Romo's mistakes, not necessarily the Giants' offense playing well. They were given great opportunities and pretty much spoon-fed into the red zone on a lot of those opportunities. So again, I'd put them at 2. I don't think it's fair to put them any lower than 3. And it'd be hard for me to say who my number 1 is. So I didn't really prepare a list the way you did. But overall, I think you got the right teams in there, but the order might be different depending on who you're talking to.
And the Giants are certainly one of the top 5 as long as this talent is going in on a week in and week out basis. And I'm scratching my head to why the Giants gave away a 23-0 comeback that was, perhaps 6 inches of Des Bryant's finger away from winning this football game. But it just seems a little different that division foes always seem to just play better no matter what their talent level is. No matter what team in the NFL, it just seems that there's a different level of competition playing a division foe. And the Cowboys came into this one, the Giants didn't need this game also as much as the Cowboys did. And Dallas came into this one, they're at home. And also not to mention the Giants had to go on the road in this one, and the Cowboys gave perhaps their best effort of the season and came up just inches short. I'm scratching my head to why the Giants gave away the comeback, but it might just be that running game, and that might just hold them back from winning a championship like they did last year. And they're also the defending world champions. When's the last time we've had back-to-back world championships? Perhaps the Niners or the Cowboys in the 90s might ring a bell. And certainly we'll have to wait and see how the Giants play once they round out the season and perhaps make it to the postseason. They're 6-2 now. But I also want to mention why the Atlanta Falcons aren't higher. I mean, of course, the defense is not, I don't believe, is there. But the offense can certainly come around and make things going. And the Pats made it to the Super Bowl. We were talking about this before the broadcast. They made the Super Bowl with one of the worst defenses of all time. They were in the running for the NFL record of that category. And the New England Patriots made it because of the turnovers. The Falcons are doing the same thing. They're 7-0, and they're winning games in all different assets. Against the Broncos, they're turning the ball over and giving the offense a chance. And then against teams like Carolina and Oakland, they're just throwing the ball deep and winning in that fashion. They've also been able to run the ball, top 10 in that category. The Falcons are number 5, but they may climb up the countdown in the coming weeks. We might have another countdown, perhaps Phil's power rankings in the coming weeks, but that was my top 5, and obviously these teams know how to play and know how to win.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Falcons, you can almost look at them, you want to talk about, head-scratching statistics, when the Packers were on their Super Bowl tangent. Here they were, I believe, 28th in the league in defense, but we're top 5 in turnovers. So just because you give up all those yards and all the way up to the 20, and then you get an interception or you get a fumble in the red zone, it all comes out to 0 points. So really, some of these numbers are hard to really factor into how good these defenses are. And again, the way I look at it, Atlanta's battle tested and they know how to win the tough game. The Cowboys against the Giants this week showed that maybe the Giants need to get a little bit more into that. You talk about back-to-back champions. I think it'll be maybe another 10 years before we see, if the Giants don't do it this year, I don't think they'll be a back-to-back Super Bowl champion for at least 10 years.
I don't know if it's all defense that seems to be throw out the window and just trust the turnovers, but of the top 5 defenses in the NFL, only 2 of them are really fortified teams, the Niners and the Texans at 1 and 3 respectively. And out of the other top 5, it also includes the Seattle Seahawks that perhaps gave up the most points they have all year to the Detroit Lions of all offenses. The number 4, the Cowboys, and number 2, the Steelers. The NFL seems to not be relying on the defense. Defense doesn't even seem to be winning games anymore. Now, of course, you need a defense to be able to stop at least somewhat of the offense, but offense is the key to win championships now, and it seems like if an NFL team does not have a quarterback, they can't win a championship. Just obviously, there's plenty of teams that would be in the running for a Super Bowl title if they did indeed have a quarterback as Seattle. But obviously, it seems to just be if you have a quarterback that can win, then you'll be on your way to the Super Bowl because defense doesn't seem to matter anymore.
Yeah, I don't know that it doesn't matter anymore, but the way you look at defenses and analyze them, I think, has just changed. Again, these teams, I think you hit the nail on the head more along the lines of they count on the big play maybe a little too much. If you stop them before they get, past midfield, then you don't have to rely on that turnover. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to go about that, but the ability to turn the ball over, to get points from your defense or even your special teams, to take some of it off the offense that is already pretty darn good, regardless of who the team is always a plus and is always going to help your team try and get to the Super Bowl.
And obviously, just again, ask the Seattle Seahawks if they did have an elite quarterback. Now, I'm not a huge bagger on Russell Wilson. He's playing very well. But obviously, the offense is the weak link in Seattle. Same thing with the New York Jets. They're ranked top 10 in the NFL on the defensive side, but they don't have a quarterback that can win. A pathetic offensive performance, 9 points in a must-win divisional game at home where you need this win to keep pace with the New England Patriots or indeed any wild-card AFC team. This conference is a very lethargic conference with not very many teams being in the running for, of course, winning that wild card race. As right now, the Jets still are within 1 game of being a wild card team. But after a shellacking like this, 30-9 final score to an inferior Dolphin team, where it seemed like the wheels just came off the track for this team right off the start. Penalties, turnovers, inconsistent quarterback play, no TDs for Mark Sanchez. I don't want to say is it Tebow time, but certainly is this offense going to, of course, keep this team out of the postseason. 9 points today is not going to get a ton, partner.
Yeah, before I talk about the Jets, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Dolphins, the fact that they put up 30 points in a game where their rookie quarterback Ryan Tannehill was actually injured, replaced by, a quarterback who started in a few other situations, a guy that I've been a huge fan of through the course of his career, which is Matt Moore. Ended up leading the team very well. He had 131 yards and a touchdown to Anthony Fasano to help put it away, and I thought he played very well off the bench, kind of thrown into the fire there, and it was just something, I have plenty of Dolphins friends, of course, living in Florida, and I told them even before they drafted Tannehill that you might not want to give up on Matt Moore. You might have something special there, and, not that they're going to, they're not going to confuse him with Tannehill at all, but I think it was just good to see, maybe he goes somewhere else and tries to play for another team. But it was good to see him play the way he did because I thought he held the team together. He proved that he's the veteran that he is. But over to the Jets, yeah, there's just so much wrong with this team. No touchdowns on the day. Mark Sanchez, one touchdown on the day. It's looking like here. One interception. He threw the ball all over the place, but I believe he threw the ball about 53 times, which on a team where you have no running game, of course you're going to put it in your hands of the quarterback, but if the quarterback isn't capable, you're just asking for trouble. I think this Jets team has so many problems, but on top of that, none of these problems are going to be fixed with Tim Tebow.
Well, I mean, of course, no matter who you have under center, no one's writing the Miami Dolphins